Welcome to Beyond the Document, the podcast from Formpipe, where we discuss everything that is output, document, and customer communication management. Today I'm joined by not only one, but two guests in the shape of Ian King and Nicole Rainsley-King of DXC Luxoft. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you very much.
And let's get one thing clear, right? Although you two work very closely, are often seen socialising at events and share the same name, there's no relation, is there?
No.
Just to confirm.
Just a pure coincidence.
Absolutely, yeah.
The kings of DXC. And I think it would help for everybody listening to this episode. Could you just introduce what responsibilities you both have in what is a huge organisation, not only as Luxoft, but even wider as DXC?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with the company for about 13 years, done lots of roles, but over the last 3 years, I've been focusing around banking solutions, largely in the retail and corporate space.
Fantastic.
And I'm Nicole. I've been here for about 5 years now. I'm one of the sales directors focused on new business across the whole of EMEA. So that's across lots of different platforms, third parties, engineering, anything we kind of do across financial services, anything new business, I'm your girl.
Yeah, and in a little while, we'll talk about the breadth of the organisation. Also, Luxoft are a division of DXC. Do you have ability to work all the way across the larger company as well?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I've been with the company 13 years. I joined a small company called Excellium, which was about 200 people. That was acquired by Luxoft. Luxoft has subsequently been acquired by DXC. And so we're just a wholly owned subsidiary of a much, much larger organisation, which is now 130,000 strong.
Yes, yeah. And I'm a football fan, and you sometimes see DXC on football shirts, which is a sign of the size of the company.
Yeah, and I think we recently announced we're doing some work with Ferrari as well on their new cockpits.
Oh, fantastic.
So we cover the breadth of everything, so yeah.
Lovely. Okay, now we're meeting today to discuss composable banking and hopefully put in some real life references and experiences against what I think can sometimes be a bit of a theoretical topic. Now, when I've talked to you guys before, my understanding is that a banking client engages with your organisation because they're looking for somebody to lead that delivery end to end, okay, looking across the whole technical estate that they've got as well, required for their banking operations. Is that where you see your role within the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that clients are looking for from us, and you kind of alluded to the size of the organisation, is someone that has a good understanding of all of the products across the marketplace, how they sit together, and having an organisation and a team that can work with a number of different partners to pull an end solution together for a client, be it across banking or cap markets or other industries.
Brilliant. And Nicole, in your role with more of a commercial hat on, is that the same?
I was going to say, chances are we've done it before.
Yeah.
So we've done something similar in the geography that the client's based in, or we've done a very similar thing with the platform of choice they're looking to implement, or also we've been working with competitors. So we can sort of pull together best in class or what we think would be the suitable solution based on our sort of extensive partnership and networks and the third parties we work with. So I think it's just that we've done it before. With that big organisation, someone will have a relationship, have the experience. So I think it's a tried and tested solution really with us.
Yeah, brilliant. And if we just dive a little bit deeper into that, then that can be across the technology. Yeah. So by that, let's say AWS or Microsoft, it can be based on the core. You know, we work within core banking platforms. So you are core agnostic. You can
Absolutely.
Work, yeah. But then also it's any banking vertical and any location, I presume.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, chances are with DXC being such a big organisation, we have an entity, we have an office in those geographies, which really helps us and gives us that competitive edge. So we really are global rather than regional. And equally, even with delivery capabilities, we've got people that can do the work nearshore, offshore, or on-site. So, yeah.
Yeah, and given 2024 has only just finished, was there a particular part of the world that was good for you guys in that year?
I mean, I'm selfish because I work across EMEA. So we've had quite a lot going on in Africa, which has been good for us. But I'll pass over to Ian to comment more from a global perspective.
Yes, I think for me, so the banking solution space, it's been very much the Middle East for the last 12 months. And it's looking like it's going to be much the same for 2025 for us as well. We are pushing through into APAC as well. So there is a number of opportunities there around upgrading existing platforms rather than new platforms. But yeah, for the moment, it's the Middle East, which is looking very strong.
Brilliant. I know we've seen a lot of activity in Africa in 24, but seeing what's happening in some parts of APAC, especially ASEAN, I do hope to see more clients coming across our desk as well as they look to take that digital journey.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, and composable banking, like I alluded to at the start, it is a term that I think is used a little bit too easily by some people. But the way that you guys are talking, I guess you're able to signpost your clients towards best of breed vendors and really help educate them as to what's available out there.
Exactly. So we have, as I think we mentioned, we have relationships with a lot of different partners, all different sizes, all different product sizes. We have our own internal, what we would call a banking wheel. Okay. So it covers all the different parts of what a client may or may not need to build a solution. So we're either working with greenfield when it's probably everything, or a new platform in an existing ecosystem where they may not need payments or they may not need other areas. So we can actually pull things together. Again, when we look at different cores, and we work across a number of different cores now, we can say which products align better to each of those cores. We are vendor agnostic, so we're not going to go in and say necessarily, you must take this, yes, but we will certainly have a recommended set based on the core we're working with. And if the client has a preference other than that, then we can absorb that into the way we work as well.
Okay, and in your experience, if a client has chosen their core, what are the characteristics of those other ISVs, those other technology companies that you're looking for?
So we're looking for the same as anyone looks at us. We're looking for areas where they've worked with that core before, where there is a simple integration, tried and tested, something that we know is going to work almost out of the box. Yes. Where we struggle, and I think maybe we'll talk about this later, is where it's something that the client's already got and they're insistent on pulling that into a solution, and it makes it harder then to integrate, and it gives us a little bit more complexity about getting to the end result.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess it's to what degree you can have that honest conversation with the client about they're putting a challenge into the project there, which doesn't need to be present.
Quite often it's out of the control of the people we're talking to directly, and it's often a corporate decision on using that particular platform. So, I mean, as a probably bad example, but if we're working with a bank that is purely working with Azure and we're recommending products that sit on AWS, the chances are it's going to be a little bit harder for us to do. Yeah, naturally. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, and what about some examples of customer accounts where Luxoft have come in, DXC have come in and really helped lead the bank through that transformational project? So we're working on a project at the moment, which is a greenfield bank within a non-banking client. And the challenge is...
So a greenfield within so somebody who started to launch a banking service as part of their operation?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
In a non-traditional banking.
Sure.
So the challenges around that really are their maybe lack of maturity in understanding the banking requirements. From an actually implementation perspective, it is a European bank that's rolling out in a different country. Okay. So we've got two sets of regulations to consider and make sure are working. There are different challenges around the customer onboarding in each of those countries. So we need to bring multiple solutions together to allow us to do video onboarding. Right. So there's been a number of complexities. It's a relatively straightforward it's a deposit. So it's a relatively straightforward in concept, but when you look at everything else around it, it gets a little tougher. But we work with some great partners. We've managed to pull them together, and we're getting through it. Yeah,
brilliant. And you touched on the word there of regulation as well. With regulation changing all the time, and I think regulation's good. I think it's there for good reasons. But once you're within a project, I guess sometimes that throws in a new curveball. And of course, we've got DORA coming into force on Friday, which will be another thing that you guys have to contend with. Yeah. Again, within the accounts that you're working in, what kind of pressure does that bring on?
I think it's really just staying on top of it, making sure that the client understands that it's their responsibility on how those regulations are, what's the best way to describe it, are actually understood, and how they want to implement those regulations, because largely they're a set of guidelines.
Yes.
And each client can choose a slightly different way of implementing it, and not expecting ourselves or the core to be able to come up with the full answer. We need to be guided by the clients, and that's often a challenge with the smaller organisations that we work with.
I was talking to Rupert Bull of the Disruption House a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking how if you do actually look at regulation and apply it to your own organisation, it can make you more efficient. So not everybody needs to be scared of those regulations.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I spent many years working in capital markets, investment banking, and it's an opportunity to see how those regulations can be used to your best advantage at times.
And Nicole, in your region?
Yeah, I mean, regulatory is definitely at the heart of what's going on, and it's just continuing to evolve and change. It's not going anywhere. So I think it's staying on top of the different pieces of regulation that are coming through and how they impact our clients. Equally, we've got a whole reg reporting practice, and we work with a number of third parties in that space, such as NASDAQ, Axiom. So we are at the front of it. And again, looking at it from different geographies for different requirements, how they're impacted, what it means. Anything regulatory impacts absolutely everyone. So I think staying on top of it, knowing what's coming through, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, when MiFID II was coming in, I think that was going live on the 2nd of January. So Christmas was cancelled for everyone. It was a particularly miserable time for a number of consultants working on anything to do with MiFID. But yeah, regulation's definitely here to stay, and it impacts everything.
I know I did some work looking at the GCC states around data sovereignty and the severity of some of the penalties that were there.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And I mean, some of these banks are getting huge fines, even with large teams working on being compliant and being sort of regulatory ready.
Okay, and going back to the tech side, again, having a modern tech estate is something that can help meet those regulations, isn't it? That's a given.
Yeah. And I mean, look, there's best-in-class companies producing software and ways to deal with this rather than running everything through spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So appreciate different size banks and stuff, it will impact what they actually do. But there are ready-made tools where they're being reviewed, enhanced, updated, new legislation being applied to them to keep it as easy as possible. And again, we can help on that side. So.
And that comes across, that's where DXC can step in and help guide the and let them concentrate on their day-to-day business. Yeah,
and I mean, chances are we might be working on something else within an organisation anyway. So, I mean, we've got a huge book of clients. So if we might be doing something in the treasury space or on the core banking side, or we can also help in the regulatory space. So
now I'm going to challenge you both a little bit here.
Oh dear.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about the positives that you can bring to an organisation, to a project. But I also like to introduce, if somebody's listening to this podcast, are there a couple of key takeaway points that you'd raise to help people avoid? So kind of like, what are the main pitfalls that you see when you're outside looking in that people could be avoiding if they're going through some form of digital or transformational project?
Time. Yeah. I mean, the amount of times we get RFPs through and it's like, I need an answer by next week. And there's a huge amount of work. I think it's realistic expectations of what can be pulled together. So actually having the time to pull together the right people to respond to something definitely makes a massive difference. I mean, sometimes it'll be a case of you've got 2 months to respond to that, and that can feel like a long time. And others, it's like, I need something yesterday. What can you pull together? And I want to know exactly how much it's going to cost. So time for me is one of the big things.
Yeah, I think it's the same once the project starts. It's the expectations of the client and managing those expectations from the start. So I think there's always a reality check that's needed when the client says this needs to be done in 6 months, and you sit down and say, well, when you look at all of the different components that need to be brought together, you look at all of the integrations, you look at all of the training that needs to be done with the client so they can operate it afterwards. It's really getting that program in place and making sure the client understands the governance is in place, the risks are being effectively managed, standard project management. But you'd be surprised how many times the client says, no, we'll do that for you. Sure. Don't you worry about it. You're here just to do that part. And quite often things are slipping because other parts of the overall program are not really meeting the same timelines. So there's a lot of negotiation that always needs to be done.
There's a FormPipe client, an existing client, a good one, and he once said to me, it's the acceptance that the goalpost will move, right? You then, when that occurs, you're ready to deal with it and accept that that change has happened within the project. But he said too many people go into it saying, right, that's what we're doing and we're never going to shift. And in reality, that's not going to happen.
And you mentioned change, and that's the other big component because, as Nicole said, we get an RFP, we've got 2 weeks to respond, to come up with an answer with a price.
Yes.
And we clearly will put a whole set of assumptions, scope, and really tie it down as tightly as we can, and everything else becomes subject to change. So that's another area where getting that change board in place, getting the client understanding very early on that there will be change, and there will be an impact to schedule, cost, people, is really important.
Yeah. I mean, change as well within the organisation is going to be something that they need to manage as well, but we can help. We can help guide them through that. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, well, given it's January as well, what can we expect to see from you guys this year? What are you particularly looking forward to in 25?
So from a banking solutions perspective, we have been very much focused on one or two products historically. We are starting to broaden that core banking set that we're looking at. So starting to work with some of the other, I guess, more fintech aligned providers, which allows us then to open up slightly different markets and slightly different solutions. So within the sort of DXC ecosystem as well, we're working with other parts. So we're not just a technology shop. We also have business process services. So we're aligning with those guys a lot more to pull together a more, I guess, holistic solution where we can say to a very small client, such as the one we're working with in Europe, we can do everything for you. We can implement it, manage it, run it. We can run your business processes as well, and really just take away, hopefully, all of the pain from them to allow them to focus on pure business.
They just look at client acquisition, their branding, and off you go. Yeah,
that's it. So we can be that complete one-stop shop.
Yeah, brilliant. Nicole?
Yeah, and I mean, from a new business perspective, I'm always focused on new logos, so new clients, and I tend to go for the more exciting locations if I can. keeps things a bit more interesting.
That is your reputation, yes.
Yeah, get me on a plane, I will go wherever you want me to go. But I mean, we work with the big banks, we work with the small banks. I'm particularly interested at looking at some of the challenger banks. So we signed a new MSA for a reg reporting client out of London, but they're very global. So I'm keen to do more in that space. But yeah, there's never too big or too small a client, always keen. So whether it's a little family office somewhere or a big tier one bank across the globe, yeah. So new logos of what I'm interested in.
And with it being January, it's scary, isn't it? Because your sales counter goes back to zero and you start again.
Almost. I mean, from our side, it's Q4. So finished yes. The calendar year on a high for Q3. So having a good year so far. But yeah, no, absolutely. It's always a case of, well, what's the pipeline? What's coming through? And even with our Q1 starting in April, I need to have that pipeline. So where is my business coming from? In which geographies and which pieces of business do I invest in? And where's going to make me the most money ultimately?
Yeah, ultimately. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, well, I really appreciate both of you joining me today. It's lovely to be able to do it face-to-face here in Dubai. So thank you for your time.
Yeah,
thank you for joining me. If you found what Ian and Nicole is interesting, you can find out more by going to DXC's website, which is Luxoft, Luxoft.com. I'm Ben Saxton. This has been Beyond the Document. Catch you next time.